I'm John Rabel, the founder of Launch, which is a legal and business advisory firm for small and mid-sized companies. I thought I'd talk a little bit about proactive legal services, briefly what that means, and then how that really benefits businesses, and gives a few examples of how it works in your favor. So what I mean by proactive legal services is basically addressing any potential risk or issues before they come up. So you figure out what your plans are, what your strategy is for your company, and then you and your attorney advisor can think about what a lot of the common risks are that go with that, put measures in place, procedures, policies, whatever the case may be, and address a lot of the common issues before you start down that road. It goes a long way in preventing issues, disputes, whatever the case may be, in order to sort of protect the business, make sure you're not exposed to any liability that you aren't aware of, and operate smoothly, save you some time and money. So a couple of areas where proactive legal services come into play, and there's many more. This is just a few off the top of my head that I think a lot of businesses run into. One good example would be sort of your business formation, setting up your LLC or your corporation to make sure that you're limiting your personal liability. So from a proactive standpoint, if you take some time to figure out sort of how you want the company to run, who's going to be involved, who's going to have what responsibilities, how are decisions going to be made, what will happen if someone wants out of the company, if you've got partners, or you find someone who wants to buy into the company. Thinking about a lot of those things beforehand, making sure you're setting that up to leave your options open for issues, problems, opportunities that might come up down the road can save you a lot of time and prevent a lot of potential personal liability. The alternative to not being proactive about how you set up your company is just doing nothing. For example, all you've done is formed a business with the State Corporation Commission in Virginia, and that's all you've put in place. So there's a good chance you're still open to personal liability that way, and you don't have a lot of, procedures, policies in place to address issues that might come up. And trust me, issues come up all the time when there are multiple people owning a company or working together as partners. So taking the time to really think about how you see things working and potentially opportunities or issues that might come up down the road and addressing them or how they'll be handled beforehand can save you a lot of energy. Another great area where proactive legal services come into play, I think, is contracts. If you're in any business that is using contracts with customers, clients, vendors, whatever that situation is, I think it really is beneficial to take some time, develop your standard contracts that you'll be using for whatever situation, making sure you're protecting yourself as much as possible, and then thinking about a process for how your contracts are going to operate. So what I mean by that is, who puts them together, who signs off on them, who signs them, how do you get them out to the other party to be signed, and then how do you make sure that you document any important terms, such as does it need to be canceled before it automatically renews, any dates in there, any obligations that have specifics that need to be lived up to that are outside the norm. All those types of things can be sort of automated or set into a process, and then you can regularly review and update that system in order to limit any potential contract liability. It both saves time and saves money. The alternative, if you're not being proactive about how you're managing your contracts, is you just sort of do them as a consistent one-off over and over again. You may be using different contracts for similar situations, which puts you in a bind where you may not even know what's in some of your contracts, and issues often come up around that. Contracts are one of the most litigated issues for small businesses. So I think really putting time into managing your contracts, understanding what's in them, understanding how that flow works in your business goes a long way to stopping some problems. Another great area where proactive legal services can be beneficial is with intellectual property. That's something along the lines of copyrights, trademarks, trade secrets, or possibly patents. So every business has some sort of intellectual property, whether it be trade secrets, copyrights. It's important that you understand how to identify intellectual property when your company creates it, and then what you need to do in order to protect it. So intellectual property can be extremely valuable to companies. It can be a great asset, but businesses need to understand when they've created it, what it is, and then how to take the steps to protect it. Obviously all that'll vary depending on your specific business, but at some point you're creating some intellectual property. So make sure you're taking the steps to protect it. Flip side of not doing that is it becomes open knowledge to third parties outside of your business, or people are taking your valuable IP without compensating for you or using it for their own advantage. One more great area that I think can go a long way in preventing issues is how you're managing workers, whether that be employees or independent contractors. It's becoming a huge issue, probably will continue to be an issue, but employees, contractors pose a huge risk on companies. So take some time to develop your policies. You can generally map out some issues that are common with employees, happen across the board roughly. What's your policy for dealing with those? For discipline, making sure that you've got all the necessary handbooks in place. Whatever that is, make sure you're taking some time to think about it. It'll prevent problems down the road. It's almost certain at some point an employee issue will come up. So any steps you've taken to address how this is handled before it becomes an issue will be very beneficial. Also prevents you from running into the problem a lot of businesses have where they handle situations sort of individually one by one, and things are handled completely differently in similar situations, which opens up a real liability problem for companies. So you want to do everything you can to prevent that. That's a few examples of how using proactive legal services can help businesses prevent some risk and liability, sort of predict what issues might be and try to cut down on that. If you've got any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I can be reached at jrabel, that's JRAB as in boy, IL, at launchstrategylegal.com or 804-442-6090.